good?
We're good. Absolutely.
All right, here we go. Roll call first.
Tyler?
Here.
Jeff?
Yep.
John's gone. Deb's gone. Andrew?
Here.
Okay.
Agenda, very short, sweet.
Second. Move to approve.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, agenda's approved. On to the discussion. Your floor.
Do you want me to start?
Yeah.
Essentially? Okay, so stop me if you've heard all of this, if you I know that we've talked with both the council people as well as the school board on the overall goal of the project. The way that I understand this meeting to work, or the conversation to go, is really work out any concerns from either the council side or the school board side, as well as needs or anything specific from Storycom, specific to this radio tower. Where we are right now as far as in the process, this is the fifth and final site that we're trying to lock down for the overall system. So there's 5 towers that are going up across the county. The other 4 towers have secured leases for those towers. One of those being on Iowa State University property at Wallace Hall and Ames. One of them being with a school board as well, the Collins-Maxwell School District, on a farm property that they own. So they currently farm that property. They cash rent that, and they use the cash rent for that property for scholarships for their students. A third site is located at the Justice Center in Nevada. It will be built on the ground behind the building in Nevada. And then a fourth site is with a private landowner on a piece of farm property between McCallsburg and Zeren. So this is the 5th site that we're trying to find a permanent location for. We've bounced around a few different site locations up to this point. We started with this parcel, this property, the Gilbert Middle School, and that was in the initial proposal from Raycom. So Steve Holmes is here with me as well. I'm not sure if you've all met him or exactly which meetings he's been to, but this is Steve Holmes with Raycom. Raycom is the vendor that is building the radio system for us. So they'll do the construction on the tower. They'll administer to some extent the radio system once it's built out. So this tower and the equipment will be owned by Storycom, which is a 28E agreement between the City of Ames, Story County, Iowa State University, and the Story County 911 Board. So they've signed a 28E agreement to form Storycom to own and operate this radio system within Story County. Raycom is helping us to build the system out. They facilitate with the administration of the system, who can talk to whom, signing radios onto the system, clearing them off the system if we were to lose or destroy a radio, to make sure that it's cleared off the system. Those kind of things is what we've got Raycom here to do. Nick Lanning with the Sheriff's Office is here to assist me with representing Storycom and make sure that we're trying to accomplish the needs of Storycom. So Raycom, in their initial proposal for the radio system, proposed the Gilbert Middle School as one of the sites for the tower. The reason that they did this in their initial proposal is they generally look to government-owned properties to partner with for sites for a public safety tower, because of the low cost that's generally associated with them. When you look at private property, typically a private owner is going to want cash rent on the land. It can will vary widely in cost for that, anywhere from couple thousand dollars a year to several $1,000s a month, or tens of $1,000s a year. When you start to talk about wind turbines, cellular towers, those types of infrastructure pieces. So that's why Raycom kind of generally looks to public ground first, government-owned ground first, which brought us to you guys. We understand that you weren't initially comfortable with this idea. We started to look elsewhere at other government-owned properties around the area. We thought that we had settled on a parcel on the Iowa State University Horticulture Farm that is currently does not appear like it's going to work out due to some political disagreements between the county and the state as far as whose building codes that should fall under. And we've been working through that, but I think we're at a point of stalemate between the two groups. And neither one of the groups, either Story County, Iowa State University, or Storycom want to take the time and expense to go through a court proceeding to try to figure out the actual legal answer to that. So we've started to look for properties again.
Just a quick question, Tom. Who's holding that up?
It's like I said, both sides have reached an agreement to this is what they believe. They don't believe that an official answer can be given without judicial review.
And there's no clear past precedent to draw off of, and the only past precedent there is leaves a lot of gray area, which is agreed upon by both parties that, hey, this is a lot of gray area. And so there's no past precedent, there's no specific law that clarifies the issue. And so there's some, both sides are concerned about precedent being set by,
Whichever.
yeah.
So there's not one entity, whether it's Iowa State or it's the Board of Supervisors, that is being more, I mean, are they in the middle or?
Well, Jamie, I would say that I think on both sides, they both have offered alternatives and ways to try to make it work. But just, I think that in good faith, they really did try to make it work with different proposals coming from each side.
Mhm.
But none of those proposals really alleviated the concerns from the other side. And so I suppose if you got into the weeds, there's probably, you could find one that's more resistant to the other. It depends on maybe where your bias falls or where you feel, because it's all up to interpretation at this point. But I think they really did a good faith effort to work together, and it was just one of those deals in business where you just have to agree to disagree without taking it further, and time just won't allow for it with this project, unfortunately.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
Sure, yep. So we've looked at various other sites as well. I think everyone's aware of the lagoon site here in Gilbert that we looked at. We've spoken with Jeff Taylor, who's a farmer in the area. Many of you may be familiar with him. He's got some property that we were discussing to build a site there. There was some challenges and some expense there that we weren't really excited to jump into. So we continue to look for something that might be a little more economical for Storycom. We do now have a conversation ongoing with another private landowner, a farm corporation, Woodland Farms out of Story City, that owns some property basically between here and the horticulture farm. We have a meeting with them tomorrow to work out some additional details. So we are still in conversation with them. That conversation is going well, but it's not done yet. I mean, we're trying to explore all our different options. So we don't want to, because of our short time frame, we don't want to, at this point, just head down one path. We want to explore several different ones to make sure that we can try to stay on that same timeline as what were originally proposed.
That would at this point be your plan A, because it is moving forward and you believe that zoning and other things won't be a hindrance to it.
So zoning won't be a hindrance to us at that property. We have plenty of space to work within. The hesitation of that path is really the cost, because it's a private landowner. We have not agreed on a cost at this point. We've given them an initial offer of payment at $1,500 a year. They've counter-offered us at $5,000 a year. So we don't have a cost worked out. One of the things, I don't know that I would necessarily say that's our plan A, because we are very conscious of all the money that we're paying for this is taxpayer money. It's all coming from our own taxpayers. If if there's a potential to reach an agreement with Gilbert and place a site here for substantially less cost, we have to explore that option. We have to try to see if we can save those taxpayer dollars. So we're really kind of moving both of these agreements as much as we can together, and then make a determination of, does the anticipated cost for one outweigh the anticipated timeline of the other one?
Can you disclose what you paid for that? No, I think you might have mentioned in the meeting, the private land you already have an agreement with, what the cost of that is that you able to disclose?
Yeah, it is public.
Okay.
Yeah, it is $5,000 is what we're paying a year.
Got
So,
it.
and that's,
So that's fine.
Woodland Farms is aware of that, so that's why.
That's kind of what I did, so that's why I asked that. I thought
One of the issues that we faced, and one of the reasons that we believe we're at 5,000 with that property up there, is the competition with the wind turbines in that area.
Yeah.
We're on property that has wind turbines on the property as well, so the market rate for a lease is higher. We don't have the competition with wind farms down here with wind turbines. We're hoping that we can get a lower cost associated with it, but we don't know that for sure. We're a little more limited on site availability up there as well because of the wind turbines. If the wind turbine falls between that tower and the other towers in the system, it could cause some interference or some problems.
So that was my next question, was the functionality of that site versus this one. I mean, obviously, looking at cost, but functionality, is there a difference? This middle school site versus that Woodland Farms?
No, in terms of what it'll do and how it will do it, there would be no difference between this one and the other.
Because when we had our initial meetings, you were stressing the importance of placement with regard to functionality and how it works with the other towers.
Right, yes. So from our initial, and correct me Steve if I'm wrong, we haven't seen anything come up that puts that into question of the microwave paths or any kind of complication, whether we go either with the site here at Gilbert or the site on Woodland Farms property.
The other consideration we have, along with the cost of the site, is the timeline that we're on, and maintaining that timeline. We can get into that a little bit further too as our discussions progress tonight. But that's a secondary consideration as well, as we're moving both of these forward. We have a project completion date that we need to meet, and so there's a timeline component on whether one party can get to it or both of them can, and help us meet that.
So Nick or Tom, is that something that we can talk about, or we will be talking about, is that timeline? Maybe you said that before, but that's something that I would be just curious about, where we're at with that.
Yes.
Yeah. So what we would like to do, and I'm going to throw out, I'm going to propose a very aggressive schedule that would obviously need some continued communication. We would really like to have a signed agreement with one of the two parties. If at all possible, we'd like to do that by our next StoryCom board meeting, which is February 11th. So that's one day after your next school board, regularly scheduled school board meeting. If that is unattainable, I don't know that we can push out an agreement more than the end of February without delaying that end timeline. I know that I assume that there would be a public hearing that would have to take place for the school board to sign that lease. So I know that we're really tight as far as coming to some kind of an understanding tonight. It would likely, I'm not telling you what you have to do, but we would really push for a special board meeting where we can set the public hearing to occur maybe on that regularly scheduled school board meeting, so that a vote can be taken following that. Again, I know that that's very aggressive, and we're
Our understanding when working with Collins Maxwell is it's 10 to 20 day notice that you gotta get that out, so it is pushing it fast, and I think you have to have a board meeting first to approve that resolution or to establish that.
Just to go back, I know you mentioned it briefly, the lagoon, you talked about the school board meeting, again, that won't work because of engineers and is it the sewage, I believe you said nearby?
Yeah, we
That was
have,
dead, and I just want to make
Yeah.
sure we kill that horse, so.
There's a lot of issues with that site. It would take quite an investment on our part to get that site to a state that might work, and then no guarantees with the propagation, which are the decibel numbers of signal strength and stuff. You'd have to see if that also would play out, but there would be a fairly significant investment just to get that site worthy where we could build a tower on it.
And so I want to say that it's not, from my understanding, and Steve, maybe you have a different opinion, but from my understanding, it's not impossible to build there.
It's just costly.
It's just very costly and problematic for different reasons.
So if, and I'm just saying, if the school board were interested, can we hear from the city, just kind of where you think they're coming out on
Yeah,
that as
you
far
know,
as accepting or
Yeah.
approving that?
So I weighed in 3 times as a resident of Gilbert, as a city councilman in Gilbert, and as a board member of the Gilbert Franklin Fire, as is Tom. Okay, we just cranked through our budget, and it became very evident that the subscription or the radio fees
Subscriber fee.
is expensive. I mean, we stuck a $7,500 per year line item in our budget that's new to our budget, in addition to $32,000 for the next 3 years to pay for the equipment for this thing. So it's a big deal. But from a public safety standpoint, you hang around with guys like Tom and Jamie. Aaron Kester lives around the corner from me. Tickle. We've got pretty good representation of public safety people in town that can attest to why this is needed. When we left your school board meeting the other night, we stood in the vestibule and had a post-game conversation, and the fire chief from Gilbert, his pager test went off, and he had to sit outside of the glass vestibule to get his pager to work. So we know we're lacking in the area. We tossed out initially the lagoon because we wanted to do anything to secure a site at a zero cost or $1 a year cost, or we even tossed out maybe reduce our subscription fees to the tower, if we placed it on the city site, because the city contributes, 23-24% to the Gilbert Franklin Fire budget. As a homeowner or resident, we don't want to throw towers up everywhere. And we were in another camp on the initial cell tower, and then getting hit by this tower. It's like, okay, do we treat these towers equally? And, Jamie kind of brought me back in to check on this one, that, that tower's a public safety tower that makes the whole county click as far as communications, whether it's, ISU in a tunnel, on Central Campus, or Jamie in an elevator shaft, somewhere in town. So I think it really needs to happen. What we need to do is make a conditional use for that, because right now we don't have permitted towers in the city limits, and that is in the city limits. We informally polled the council that was present at our last meeting, and everybody seemed to be on board with the project going ahead. And there were still questions about the lagoon site and confusion on where and when, agreeing that excavation fill buildup would need to occur, so it's not pulling into a site, doing probes, sinking footings, and building a tower. It's actually some excavation, prior to constructing footings. But from a timeline standpoint, I don't see, again, it'd be a resolution to set a public hearing, and then a public hearing, waiving the first and second reading, and approving the construction, of one said tower on one parcel.
I don't think it's, like Frank said, we would be, as a council, supportive of it, but right now, we don't even know what we're supporting yet. You know, because of the simple fact that there's been nothing's brought forward for us to even set a hearing on. You know, and I think that's kind of where the importance lies tonight is, you know, Tom, you and I had spoke here previously, is that, you know, you guys need to know, hey, is this a viable option that we can move forward with versus a shot in the dark, and not, because time is of the essence to get it done. And so to get all the pieces to fall into place, I don't think there's going to be, you know, like Frank said, on the public safety aspect, to where it's benefiting everybody countywide, and it's a necessity. There's no secret to that, that there's going to be resistance enough from the city to say no, it's not going to happen. You know, because we would make the proper calls to get the zoning changed and let it happen.
Just out of curiosity, Jamie, because I followed the no tower signs and uproar in the city of Ames with the MetroNet tower next to the Squaw Creek there. Would you anticipate any residents in Gilbert and opposition to tower or things that could?
Yeah, and that's, as a homeowner and hearing chatter, you know, some people are going to be opposed to any change or anything that happens. The everyone wants to make money crowd, you know, the eminent domain, anti-eminent domain people, I think everybody's got a right to land and nobody should tell them what to do with it. I think if it was a cell tower generating lots of revenue for some company, i.e. MetroNet, there could be pushback, but when you can stand toe-to-toe with somebody and say, God, you know, you want the fire department to come when your house is on fire, we want the sheriff's department to arrive in town, you know, if there's an emergency at the school, and we know how flaky cell phone reception and reception of any sort, radio-wise, you know, Dave says he can, when he responds to the high school, the chief, and he says once his people get in the building to walk to the panel, he can watch them walk, but he can't talk to them on the radio. You know, so again, when it starts involving kids, safety, people, I don't think there's going to be anybody that really...
I haven't heard, and I don't know, Frank, but I don't know of any council member, and I know as the city, we have not received any kind of negative feedback, you know. Now whether or not somebody's going to show up at a city council meeting and voice their opinions or their concerns, absolutely, that may occur. But as Frank said, you know, with the aspect of saying, hey, this is why. I mean, this isn't something where we're just trying to generate revenue. You know, if your house burns down, you want people there.
It's an investment. It's an investment of infrastructure in your
It's
community.
absolutely. It's an investment of the infrastructure as well as the public safety.
Right.
You know, so I think we would be willing to entertain those conversations and deal with it how we need to. But I personally, Frank, I haven't heard of anything that's been directed at me or the city.
Tyler, you mentioned to me the other day, you said that you thought there would be an opportunity to put the new cell tower and the 911 tower on it together.
Well, that was brought up when we had a joint meeting this summer, Jeff.
Okay.
And so where my thought process goes there, I personally fully agree with Frank and Jamie. Safety tower, somewhere we have to have it, whether it's plan A or plan B, right? No doubt. If it is that it's plan B because it's less expensive and we do get agreement in the board and the city to do it preferably in the northeast corner rather than the northwest corner, then the question comes up, okay, there's also been requests for cell tower. As a resident of Gilbert, I'm going, I'd like a little better cell coverage. What about internet? You know, so my question would be then is if we did this plan B, can there be a clause in there to add cell coverage or even internet coverage on that tower? Because the last thing I want as a resident as well is multiple towers.
That's exactly what you guys just said.
Yeah.
Is that possible?
Well, go ahead.
So technically, it is possible. I think the technology's there. It happens a lot. Multiple different systems on the same tower. for co-location. It's technically possible. A few things that would change would be to anticipate that on the front side, so that the tower can be engineered such that it would support the anticipated weight or the equipment that would be associated with that. So that technically it's there. Politically, it's a tougher question, and that's because Storycom is a 20 agreement with a board that has to agree, and the way that the agreement is set up, that there's a 3-member board, and every decision has to be unanimous. The question of whether or not Storycom wants to be in the business of leasing tower space has not formally come up. There's been some conversation about it, but there hasn't been any kind of in-depth discussion, any vote, any agreement. At this point, we can't guarantee that the Storycom board would say, yes, we want to do that. We can't say we'd never do that. We just can't guarantee it.
Do you have that relationship anywhere else?
We don't. In one of the leases, so the lease with Collins Maxwell includes a clause that says if we choose to sublease, we include it, I'll just read it to you.
First, it would be cleared by the landlord to do that.
Yeah, so in assignment and subletting, it's the tenant, which would be us, may not assign this lease without prior written consent of the landlord, which would be the Gilbert schools. And that your consent can be withheld or conditioned in your discretion. We can't sublet the premises, any portion of it, without your prior written consent. And then in the event that you do consent to us to sublease any portion to a private third party, the parties shall mutually agree on such use and compensation arrangement. So basically what that means is if any cell company would come to Storycom and say, hey, we want to put equipment on your tower, we'd like to pay you for it, it would essentially reopen the lease agreement and say, okay, we need to have the conversation with the school board, find out if you guys are okay with that or not, and then if you're okay with it, what is that agreement? What does that look like? Is there shared compensation? Is it all one side or the other? So that it just kind of allows that, but it doesn't guarantee it on either side.
But it keeps it open, and if we do, then it allows you guys, because we're not in it for profit, we need the service, but then it allows that part to reopen. So if there is payment on it, you guys have the ability then to negotiate that part of the lease on what that payment's going to be and how that's split up. Or
Yeah. As a city resident, I would think we'd have to go forward with something like that, because the last thing we want to do is if we do Plan B and it's in the city, but we don't put anything else on it, so we got to build more towers.
I would think that, being the taxpayer, being your customer, patron, I would think the school would want to write a similar lease to.
Yeah, I don't see why we went for it.
And I don't know what Iowa State, in their lease, because they're a partner in that board, does their lease look similar? That if
No, their lease is actually
thicker?
much thicker.
the county lease is a bit more simplified. I think it's at like $1 a year rate, but there's no language in there about adding. Only the Collins Maxwell School District is the only one we did. They had that concern. I'll tell you, our initial intent was not to go down that road, but we've never had formal conversation on it, and so that needs to come up. So to reiterate what Tom says, we could sit here tonight or even at the agreement and say, make any promises that would be allowed, but the door is open. There just hasn't been a conversation between the Storycom board members on it.
Tonight, you would be, you are, with this draft, saying, well, that clause could be in there.
We would certainly agree to that clause
Yeah.
the way that it's written. Yeah.
And we have extra copies to leave with you.
We would struggle with a clause that says if that would require us to have cellular equipment on the tower if any cellular company were to approach us or approach you guys. Because We just haven't had the conversation. We just don't know what the board's feelings are with it.
Other things in this that would be covered is your attorney fees. Any attorney fees associated with getting the lease set up and signed are covered by Storycom, so you wouldn't be on the hook for any of that.
But again, it wouldn't affect the reception of integrity of the tower already. If you would have, I think we asked it before, and you said you don't believe so.
For a cell phone?
For a cell phone, or internet or whatever else, it wouldn't.
I think that would be something in the lease or the contract that's signed with the cell company. That would have to be determined to make sure it doesn't, because public safety is a priority. And so there'd have to be some testing and some reasonable language within the contract or the lease with them, that when they put their stuff up on there, if it's degrading the signal, then there's some ways to rectify that.
And with this being built as a public safety, what's called P25, Project 25 requirements, any equipment that's mounted there, it would have to be approved through that same standard.
So when we first had the conversation, we were proposing the northwest corner of the property, and further conversations, this at the board level, I'm not talking about the city, the board was like, probably not our optimum. That's when we started down the road with the city. Was there other places in the city? Now that you've come back to us and asked about Plan B, I think we've already talked about our interest is the northeast corner. My question is, what would you need for access to that? Could you use our current driveway and the gravel that goes around and then just head north? Because we want to minimize splitting up. The reason we're not interested in northwest, one of the reasons is because we're actually using that for athletics, right?
Yep.
So if it requires a road through the middle, that's also problematic. So.
Yeah, so the page that I just handed out is really a zoomed in portion of the just the north half of this. So on the map, because of the way that the satellite pictures are, we have a kind of an adjustment of dates. Obviously the southern portion was taken in the summer when the grass is green, and then the upper portion is taken in the fall or winter. So the page that you have is really zoomed in to this portion.
Is Gretinger, is that the gravel road?
Yeah,
Okay.
I got right there, yep.
Yep,
Yeah,
okay.
that's the house
Yep.
right there.
All right.
So this is the
Okay.
little drive that goes in. Typically the soccer goals are set
Yeah,
up
yeah,
here
yeah.
and over here for soccer practice. Down here is the bridge that the students would cross for recess. So we're really looking at this upper half of the property to keep it away from the building. The page that you have also includes contours every 2 foot. Let's see if I can bring those up here as well. I'll have to zoom in further to get to them. But so one of the concerns, the reason that we came with the northwest corner initially was really a cost savings. So as we looked at access to get to the tower site, we were looking at a fairly short gravel access road that would come in off of the public gravel road to where the tower compound will be in the tower itself for maintenance, for filling of the LP tank for the portable or the emergency generator, any other issues that we needed to get access to. So that would be a permanent road. So that's why we pushed it over here, is just to get shorten the length of the road, shorten the length of the utility run, because we'll have to run power back to wherever the tower is located. So that's really what took us to that northwest corner. I think that we're comfortable with the northeast corner. We know that would increase some costs in different fashions. One of the things that we would want to be cautious of is not going too far to the northeast corner where the ground drops a little ways, and we've got some water flow that comes through here. So this area right along the property line gets fairly low and sees, as I zoom out, you can kind of see the dark patches where the water will generally flow in from these fields down the property line and then turn here to run through the city of Gilbert. So one of our concerns would be just making sure that we weren't too far to the northeast corner to where we end up in that having issues with water.
As far as the road goes, what's the current road that you have? Do you have any roads that get you to that?
No.
There's
Right
nothing,
there.
what I was asking is where Tom's at right now. I mean, that's already there. I'm assuming, Lindsay, that once we're done with all the construction, that'll be tidied up, but that's
Yep.
gravel back there.
Is it the intent, would that remain after the construction, or is that just during the
Yeah.
construction?
No, it will. It'll
If
be
you
back
go
to the
to,
same.
if you go to Google Earth, you can see the original drive
Oh, okay.
that has always been there since the building was built.
So when it comes to the road, we don't have a hard set
This
place.
is Google Earth.
Coming off that section there might be a shorter
That road's
run than coming
always
off the
been there.
public roadway.
Well, that's,
Yeah.
you know, and again, all this is kind of informal, and we're just trying to be transparent. If it would require a road all the way through that, it kind of negates all of the, right? So our question is, could you just come off of that north side, yeah, right in there and just head north?
So I think that is possible. One of the things that we would have to find out, you know, how much water comes through here, what would be required for culvert and bridge, to bridge that low spot to get up there. So I don't think it's insurmountable, it's just
Yeah.
trying to
You can kind of see the
Find out
concern
what that
though,
costs.
if we gotta put a road all the way across, it just wipes out that, I
All of
mean,
that
it
space.
really just,
Yeah.
And
I mean,
another
one
thing,
of
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but another thing, and this is just, looking down the road, we've talked about trying to do an outdoor classroom
yeah.
that would be closer to that road, so that if we're bringing elementary in, if we're bringing high school in, whatever, we could do that in that northwest corner. So, and again, you know, the school board hasn't even seen anything on that yet, that's still in the developmental stage, but that's something that we might try to do. So, again, that's why that northwest corner would not probably be the best for us.
Okay. You know, one of the things that's possible from us, you know, like I said, we can't come in off of here. We would really have to look at that ditch and what would be possible as far as what we would need for water flow and make sure that we're not causing any problems. We could, if we were to run the road along the north end, the road could really be pushed almost against this property line. So we could keep that, you know, without space behind it. We could keep the road against the property line and then turn and come down into the compound and the tower structure from the north.
Yeah, we just didn't want.
It certainly doesn't have to be
Two-thirds of the way down there,
Yeah.
you say, well, that's.
We
fine.
certainly,
Right.
yeah, we certainly don't have to run it, you know, directly across the property.
If it was along, if the city allowed it with the zoning and stuff, along that north property line, is that
I
an
just don't
option?
understand that you guys talk about expense. It'd be a lot cheaper for you to come off the roads that are already by the school and come straight up.
Yeah, assuming with the culvert and a ditch and what it
But
takes
you're
to,
not moving that much water in there.
okay.
I mean, you're just not.
Yeah.
I've never seen very much. water.
Tom, if you would use something like that, what would you be bringing in there? I mean, would just something be going back there to fill up tanks, LP tank or something? The reason I say that is we have a playground that's right over to the side there. So if we're moving to that northeast and get a ways away from that, that wouldn't be an issue, but I just want to make sure we're safe there.
So obviously the heaviest construction traffic, the heaviest traffic would be just during the initial construction.
Okay.
So we would have to bring in a crane to erect the tower. So that's going to be one of the biggest pieces of equipment that comes in here. Correct me if I'm wrong.
And that in the shelter delivery itself.
Okay, yeah, so the emergency shelter that's associated with it is a pre-engineered concrete structure, roughly 10 foot by 20 foot, 10 foot. Anywhere in
10
there.
or 20.
That comes in on a flatbed and then gets set into place. So that during the construction is really when the heaviest traffic would occur. Once it's built, then if there's any serious maintenance to the tower, we might have to bring in some equipment like that. But typical traffic would be Pickup
It's gonna be
truck,
your LP truck
the-
that comes in.
and like the
Clearance,
LP
clearance
truck.
snow and LP, that would be your most regular
Mhm.
traffic.
So somebody be in there roughly monthly to check the generator, to do their normal maintenance, preventative maintenance, and that would just be a regular pickup truck in and out, and then plowing to keep that open so that if there is any issues with the tower in the, in the middle of the winter, and you have to get in there and do the maintenance, you can get access to it.
For this site in the northeast, have you just in general plotted how much space that would take?
We have, if you look at the bottom of the page that you have, that is to scale the size of the compound once it's built. So it's generally a 50-foot by 50-foot compound that would enclose the emergency shelter, the emergency generator, and the tower, as well as the LP tank itself. So that would all be
That's drawn to
enclosed.
scale to this.
That's correct. That's drawn to scale to this.
So if I were to just, and if you say not here, but I mean, it could be no bigger than that.
Right.
Let's see that.
Pretty close. Come about up to the center of your box, about 100 foot off of your north and your east fence.
Yeah.
So one of the other things that we do need to keep in mind is the engineered fall radius of the tower. So if something were to happen and the tower falls, it can be fairly easily engineered to fall within a 100-foot radius. So the general lease agreements, what we look for is a total of a 200 by 200 foot square. So that gives us 100 foot in all directions to fall and not affect any of the buildings.
But that fall could include this area.
Could
so you
include
don't
that,
want
correct,
it for-
yes.
The fall area could go right to it.
Yeah, so just measuring in from where we are here, if I just go 100 foot from the property line there, 100 foot down from the property line here. It's pretty close.
That's like that.
Kind of right in that intersection would be where the center of that compound would be.
That's
So that would be about as far as we'd like to push the compound, just to have that 100-foot clearance. Depending upon, and Steve, you kind of alluded to it.
Yeah, your
with the
sun
county
into that
and the-
drainage is the biggest concern on that. From the east side, once we physically look at that area.
Sure. Yeah,
But
there's
if
drainage.
you keep it at the 998 contour, right, it's gonna be 10 foot higher than the original site on the other side.
Yeah, in that spot right there.
The overall elevation, yes, but the water path, because this channels the water through.
Yeah, but
would
the
be there.
channel's gonna be at 994, and up there, if you extend the 998 contour, right here,
Yep.
you're 4 foot higher than here.
So just left of that.
Yeah, that's where the water's,
Yeah.
and the water does follow that fence line.
Okay,
It
yeah.
goes down, kind of behind the acreage is the low spot.
Yeah, I think that contour that you're talking about falls right in line with about that 100 foot we're looking at anyhow.
Right.
And then unfortunately, when I come out, then it
Yeah.
loses the contours, so.
Yeah,
Gotta be
Yeah, so we're, that contour kind of in here, we get a little bit higher just right through this space here.
So 50 by 50 and then 100 around all of that.
And that 100 around that would be grass still, it wouldn't be part of the compound, but
The
it-
compound would be fenced.
Would be fenced, yeah, typically an
Everything else would not.
8-foot fence with barbed wire at the top. I know that there was some concern about kids getting in there. And then depending upon what city ordinances would be, whether or not there's any screening as well associated with that compound. So if we would plant bushes around it or something, or if we would leave it open, there's pluses and minuses to each side. But
And right now, Lindsay, correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, way up there, it's really not being used.
Then I checked with Mike Danson, which would be the middle school principal, and I checked with Tim Pizzetti, which would be athletic director, and kind of talked about that, but I didn't have exact, but that I don't think is going to be a factor for us. You're right, Tyler.
And to go back to the road, just so I was clear, were we still looking at coming up from the existing drive and across the waterway, or that north property border, if we could go straight up against the tight?
I mean, from managing construction projects, I don't want to weigh the cost both ways. If it's going to take a shallow tube and some buildup there, but you really have got to watch because you can't build the water and kick it to the east on Fourth's cornfield. You just got to weigh the costs
Sure.
both ways, I think.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't, there is no setback.
What is the width
For
on that?
drives.
30 feet,
On the road, 20,
20?
right, Steve? It's about 20. I would say
Rock
maybe,
road, the rock itself is 8 foot, but usually you figure 8 foot.
and cost-wise, I don't know what would be better, but if that road were on the north property border, it would avoid any through traffic through your parking lot with LP trucks and snow trucks
And that's
During
where
the
the
construction
construction
phase.
would come into.
yes.
Yeah, so the construction, yeah, the road will be built out first.
Is that generator
Construction
going
will be
to run once a day?
I think it's a backup generator, isn't it?
I mean,
So
yes.
yeah, it probably will kick on.
Does it kick on once a day or
Not
once a week?
daily, is it weekly or monthly?
That's
Weekly.
really up to you, typically it has to be
Weekly. So if it fires up weekly and does its test, it's not going to
use
go
a
through a
lot.
lot of propane. If you put, I would assume they put a 1,000-gallon tank. out
Honestly, it's
there.
probably once a year if that.
Yeah.
Depends on your, how good your electricity is.
So here's the gig. I think you and me and Andrew, I think we're all in agreement that we like this opportunity to help in this project. We got to take it back to the board. But I think a big keeper for these guys, and we appreciate the city helping, but I think we need a chance to put that other tower up there too for cell tower reception. I think that
Add additional components, have that clause, and I guess as much as you can.
I mean,
If
you
you
know,
haven't had those
Yeah, yeah,
conversations, we should, because the last thing I think we want is to build yet another tower.
No.
And if it reduces the cost, I don't know what that, what Collins Maxwell's lease looks like from a dollars and cents standpoint. And if something else goes on it, is it named how much it goes to, or how is that?
It is not, so that's the actual
You
language
you
that's
read
in
it,
the,
that's it.
that's the language that's in the Collins Maxwell.
What is their lease price? They're in the county, right?
They are in the county.
So you're buying a little more setback, right?
Correct, so for the county setbacks, it's 150% of the height of the tower.
Right.
That tower is 275,
Yes.
280, somewhere in there. So
275.
we're roughly 400 feet back, and it's structured in a corner of S14 and County Gravel Road. So we have that setback for both of the right-of-ways. So we're roughly 400 feet back from both the gravel road and 400 feet off of S14. So we're quite a ways into the field a little bit more. Our lease area is still that 200 by 200 foot area. Once it's built, the farmer will be able to still plant and farm within that leased area up to the 50 by 50 foot compound. But we've got the gravel access road going to it, and then the 50 by 50 foot.
Put a fence up so he can't run his planter through it.
So
Yeah.
put numbers on it with the drive and the compound and the 200 foot, the area outside, it's 1.11 acres is what the drive and the compound and everything, that's how much land we're technically leasing. The actual land that we're using up that he can't farm is 0.24 acres. That's what the drive and that 50 by 50 compound. And so just to give you an idea of the land mass that it's taken.
And their lease agreement is $1,500 a year. So because they use that property for income, for scholarships, we wanted to make sure that we weren't, that they're still using that. That property got willed to them with that express purpose. So we didn't want to put them into a position where they couldn't continue to meet that requirement. So we are paying them that $1,500. That is going directly into their scholarship fund as the rest of the cash rent for the property is.
Timeline, I know you said that February, our next board meeting would be what you'd like. I'd like to hear from the city, but then if let's say everything went, when would construction be?
Steve?
We'd like to start time-ish.
So one of the things that we have to consider that delays the start of construction is the approvals and regulatory process for the frequencies with the FCC, whether or not there's any concerns with the FAA for any flight paths, just clearing all of those things, which takes time. So,
And it's the NEPA SHPO that take the longest, the state historical boards and environmental. It usually takes 3 months.
So optimum timeline would actually be during the summer.
Mhm.
School
Yes.
use.
That'd be good.
The ground's hard, you can drive anything on there and not dent it, that's all.
Our next meeting's the 10th.
Okay.
We do have a special meeting on Monday night.
Yeah. So,
So we
yeah,
really
walk
need
us,
to talk about that.
walk us through the hearing process that we would need.
So I went back and we, here 10 days, we'd have to publish in the Ames paper. They don't publish on Fridays. So we count back on the 10th. We have the public hearing on the 10th. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 would be January 31st, but that's on a Friday, so that would not make the paper. So we'd have to have it on, the paper would have to be published for the hearing. To be on February 10th would be Thursday, the 30th.
yeah.
So that means we'd have to take action at our special board meeting on the 27th.
Action
To publish the.
to publish
hearing
it, just to
and
publish it. Wouldn't mean that.
I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean we're doing it, because there's a lot of
So
knowns.
you'd agree to publish it, and then at our meeting, we'd have the public hearing at the beginning. Anybody wanted to do it, and then we'd make a decision that night, or we could,
On the 27th.
on
No.
February 10th.
10th, okay,
27th would be board action to
okay.
have
Gotcha.
me publish the
Just to do the
hearing.
public hearing with that.
And that works with the city because we have our meetings on the same night.
Meetings.
Frank, is that?
Yeah, our next scheduled meeting. I would say we went through the same process when we swapped land for the roundabout. I mean, that same, because the school couldn't
Yeah.
do that deal without
Mhm.
the same process.
Yeah. I mean, the public hearing process, just
Yeah,
like
that-
Gail described, just needs to happen.
Yeah.
We just need the time,
The
days.
the question will be, is the board ready to move on February 10th? And I guess if there's more information you want to gather, you want to gather people.
When we hear back from the project, I know negotiations and meet tomorrow with them.
We're meeting tomorrow.
You'll have a decision probably, you think, tomorrow on that?
We won't have any decision from the board until February 11th. So it'd be my intention to essentially hammer out all the details of the lease agreement tomorrow, which will involve including price, including exact location on the property that they're going to see the tower, to have that available and present that to the Storytown board on the 11th. What I'd like to do is have both agreements available and present them both to the board and say, here's the last best offers that we have from each side. Let's make a decision today at this February 11th meeting, and we can proceed. We can sign it and proceed tomorrow.
But so that your efforts are for nothing,
Yeah.
we obviously would love to partner with the school and the city to have it here. There's definite benefits to us. Our biggest concern is that timeline and being able to meet that timeline. And with the private landowner, we don't have so much of a concern because with them, it's just the dollar amount, figuring it out. And so that really, in good faith of you guys, if we can move forward and get this done on the timeline, this really is the direction we want to go. But we got to have that other option if it fell through, so we don't get pushed back on our timeline and ready to go with it. And we have copies of just a generic lease with terms so that you can look over them. But we can,
There's more copies here.
we can get a draft copy made up very, very quickly and to you guys so you can see them and make any changes before you get to where you're making that final decision.
Yeah, and I was going to say, our legal counsel will want to review that and before we even take it to the paper and for the public hearing.
Yeah.
And even before the board approves for the public hearing, we want to.
So we could, if it works best, we have our legal counsel for Storytown we get your contact information and connect
I
them.
think we should still have it, but yeah.
That's true.
And, the draft's there, so it won't take us long to tweak it and get in there, and then get your attorney's feedback, work it together to make sure it meshes together for both sides, and I would think we could have it ready.
So,
The legal description.
I was gonna say, that's one of the questions that we had, because we also have a temporary lease agreement with the Collins, or excuse me, the Colonesco School. And each school district handled it differently. For the Colonesco, we did not need a legal description. For the Collins Maxwell District, we did. So that was one of my questions, is whether or not you would want us to.
We would
provide-
not know that until we seeked legal counsel to see what Connor, we work with Connor Watson, with
Yeah.
Allers, so I don't know how familiar.
Connor was, so Connor will require it.
Connor was the same as Collins Maxwell.
Connor's Collins Maxwell.
Okay.
I'm sure he would have the same.
I tried to pull Storycon minutes from their board meeting. I couldn't pull anything. The only thing was posted was from June.
Okay.
Well, I didn't, do you know why that is? I mean, the last meeting that was posted was June, the minutes. The agendas were all posted, but I couldn't read any minutes from the board meetings for November, September, October. I did on my phone, so maybe. I pulled June's, and I pulled
Okay.
your agendas, no problem. But I just couldn't pull any of the minutes. I was just trying to get
Do you
myself.
remember exactly what, I know it's on the Storycon site here.
Yeah, I can send it to you.
Yeah, I'm trying to think where it comes from.
Yeah, I mean, I just tried to do a little background before.
No, I would be able to do that.
Yeah.
Be all for it.
Here's what I'm at. That's,
I think that's where it's at.
Yeah, it just stops here.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
And then the agendas go all the way through, and the minutes now.
If we would need information for our legal counsel, do you have a card that I could have here? Would you be the person I would talk to about that?
I tell you, I'd appreciate it if you run it through me.
Okay, that's fine. Whatever I need, I think I got you on speed.
Yeah, on that cell phone, imagine that.
We would have to.
Yeah, give me your contact information.
Yeah, so I just went to Storycon, archives,
Yep.
and I found Storycon, and then I just clicked on all, you know.
If you have a card, or I'll get your information, and then I'll get back to you on
Might
that.
be in crayon there.
Yeah.
No,
That's how I operate.
I have not.
Picture books and everything else.
That road coming out. That's something we can talk over very quickly.
Washington.
So it does appear as though
Oh, I've been on everywhere.
agenda,
Yeah, agendas I found everywhere.
We'll let you-
Not the minutes. Yeah, I was there. That's like too.
I haven't talked specifically with John or Deb to say, hey, would you approve this or not? But at our last meeting where we had a conversation, since
What's the 2019
issues, which one of them was, well, can it be marital use?
sorry, go ahead.
And the other was two locations.
Certainly understand where you guys are coming from with that co-location and multiple use. That, I know that's something that we probably will not be able to agree to. Being able to guarantee that it could be or will be a co-location. We could put that language in there that if it were to be a co-location, there would be discussions that would open that up. But without talking to our board, and I don't know, even at that, I don't know if we'll, do you see that moving forward? That was a condition, that it had to be a co-located?
So they, like I said, they haven't had any formal discussions on it. My gut feeling and through individual, I think there's current disagreement from the individual board members on how much they would be okay with that. And because any board action requires a unanimous decision, I don't know. If we could, if it
In my,
If it
Is that a deal breaker for you guys?
Well,
if it provides enough revenue.
in my mind,
to-
if it reduces the cost of operation, and somebody disagrees with that on the board, I got a problem with their disagreement, because any of these towers that go up, if you can sign a license with, you know, a major cell phone carrier or, you know, any company that could bring more money back to the entity leasing the site and at the same time reduce the cost of operation to all the users, it'd be crazy not to do it.
So I think there's agreement in that aspect.
Yeah.
Some of the concerns with doing it is the concerns about degradation of signal on it.
Yeah.
The other concern specifically with this is we just don't have the time afforded to us to hammer that out because,
Right.
you know, and I wish I could say, yeah, I guarantee it's gonna happen, it's just gonna take time. I can tell you that the conversation is gonna happen, I just can't tell you what the decision's gonna be out of it. And so there's a lot of pros to doing it, and there's some cons to doing it, and some of the other cons as well is we have been subject to renting towers from other people, and we're just at their mercy on what happens with those towers and where it goes. And so if we start entering into leases, co-locating, it somewhat hampers our ability to control and throughout the 30-year lifespan of the radio system, it kind of limits your ability, some flexibility with it. But there's certainly pros to it, and they just have not hammered it out to a point where they can agree, yes, this is a net plus to the taxpayers.
I
We should do
I
that.
think, you know, I commend Collins Maxwell for putting that in their lease, and I think it needs to go in the lease to continue to leave the door open, and then.
Well, that's the
once-
honor that put that in, so you got good representation.
Once the projects move forward and the towers are being built,
Make sure we have
then,
that.
you know, the conversation with the board, and who is, the board.
So it's Story County, just Story County, a board of supervisors sits on that currently, it's Linda Merkin. And then ISU, and that's Pam, what's
Kane.
Pam's? Pam King.
Okay, yeah, Vice President of Business Department.
And then Ames, and that's Steve Schenker. And so those are the three board members that make up the board and vote.
So Nick, when would that come in front of them? When would, if say, and again, just hypothetical, but to say that things would move further, how soon would that be brought to them for a decision like that?
Well, I'm anticipating when that conversation comes up and seriously talked about, it's going to be after we get on board with the permanent system, which will be about a year out from today's date. And that's when we'll be on the permanent system. There's so much for the board to tackle and address to make sure this project stays on time, within budget. Things are happening that this right now hasn't been a priority up to this point, and so it's not something that they have spent much time on. So I would foresee them waiting until we get the permanent system up and operating, making sure it's serving the public safety needs the way it should. And I would guess at some point that conversation would come up, or it could be put on the agenda for them to talk about in more detail the pros and cons of it. Does that sound about right? And a year's probably pushing it.
I would think so. You know, I think it's certainly possible for them to have the conversation earlier than that. I don't know that we would be, they'd be prepared to take action on any some of the network until we know that the system is built and operating to our expectations as well, and then we would start to look at what we can add to the system if there's any coverage.
But again, main concern is signal strength, and that's
Yes.
where the concern is
Yeah.
coming. Okay,
Yeah.
that's
To make sure that it functions the way that it's
Yeah.
designed and expected for
Fully
public safety.
understand.
One of the big drawbacks is the new 5G that's going out now.
Yeah.
The bandwidth, I'm no whiz at this stuff, but it's so close to the bandwidth that we operate on. There's some serious concern about that degrading. I know that's a concern with the 5G service that they're putting up all over the places. It's close to what our radio system operates on, so. But that is the.
Can't you move your system,
The,
the wave?
The bandwidth?
Yeah.
Not very easily, no.
Really?
Because, again, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe not technically, but regulatory wise, so that the allotted frequencies that we're given goes through state and federal approval for those specific frequencies.
I think the
So if we were to
dedicated public
change
safety
that,
bandwidth
we have to
nationwide
reapply.
Gotcha.
falls within that spectrum, and that also 5G is fairly close to that. the way it was explained today to us.
Frank?
Again, I don't know that they're insurmountable, we just don't want to make any promises that we just don't know.
It definitely, it's something that we anticipated being a concern and brought up tonight. It's definitely something that we would bring up to our Storycom board, that this was a topic that was discussed in great detail, even to the point to express where you guys stand on it, or that you really need it. And, you know, if I lived here in Gilbert, I wouldn't want 2 towers in my city too, so everybody understands that aspect of it.
Well, and it makes sense on the timeline as far as waiting, I mean, because priority does fall with the emergency services. You know, I mean, that's the desired goal for that. It's not the cell service, which would be secondary. So I completely understand waiting to see and make sure that it's functioning, and then crossing that bridge as you get to it. But within the clause, it's at least or in the agreement, it's there, and does not slam the door shut for future consideration.
And it certainly, as we as a working group explore this issue more, because we've already identified this as something we need to explore more and make a recommendation to our board in the future on it. I mean, we have other expenses, so obviously if it can reduce our overall expenses. You mentioned the radio fees, the subscription fees. For each radio, it seems like a small amount, but you add those up and then over 12 months. And so even like with this other option at 5,000, you know, over the course of a year, and then you multiply that out by 15 years and maybe 30 years, that's a lot of money. So that's why we seek the lowest cost that we can.
You mentioned 30 years
Just
the whole time.
essentially-
Is the plan 30 years? And
So,
that's kind of
yeah,
the
so the
usage of
the initial term is a 15-year term,
15-year term.
and then there'd be 3 5-year renewals put in there, and they're automatic renewals. And then there's, within those 3 5-year renewals, there's options for the landlord to terminate. And so that's all specified within the lease agreement.
Are there escalators?
So that is one of the
And that
discussion points, we want to
yes.
make sure that there's comfortability. I know Connor had some issues with that, with Collins Maxwell. This is very much like just with the Collins Maxwell language removed, their name and address and everything out of it. So so they did ultimately agree to that 15-year term. You may find, you may talk about 5-year terms, you know, a total of 46 5-year terms. Because of what it costs to build out a system, the design process. So in the termination, there's language that's fairly long lengths of notification for termination. We really do stress the need to sign an initial 15-year agreement.
Yeah, we're okay with that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I get that.
yeah.
You know, the only thing is if you have abandonment of the tower, is there language in there that you put it back, the land the way you found it?
Yes, there is.
Okay. So
The
we'll
land-
remove all above ground.
There's even language in there, I believe it's still on this one, it's in all of our others, that if we choose and you want the tower, and the tower's still standing and we're done with it, we can leave the structure there. If it's agreed to by both parties.
Yeah.
And just basically sign over to whoever to utilize for your existing communications or your cell phone. But our anticipation is that this system will be at least a 15-year system, and we anticipate 30 years.
Yeah.
And so that's why we're locking down these sites and doing those 3 renewals to get us to that 30-year period.
I don't know, I have a real hesitation when you don't give the city any wherewithal to put that cell tower in. I mean, for the cell reception. I mean, you know, that was one of the deals that I liked when you and I talked, was the fact that the 911, first, I don't want Jamie somewhere, or you, or anybody else, and you can't get signal. I get that. But I think it's important, and I get it, it's in here,
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean we're gonna get it.
No.
Right.
You know, and so, as good as that piece of paper is, that's, you know, that paragraph is really nailed for us.
I appreciate that, Jeff, and that's why we want to be as transparent as possible. Unfortunately, you know, if we're having this conversation a year ago and we had a year to meet our deadline, that would be completely viable to let's hammer this out and see if we can get to that point. And then both sides would know exactly what's expected and make that decision. Unfortunately, this is such a large investment that there's really no option for us to delay the project. And I'm quite confident that would delay it to the point where we couldn't we just couldn't proceed forward.
What do you guys think?
But, I mean, I think that once I understand the makeup of the board, you know, I'm gonna go lobby the board, or lobby the individuals, you know, on the board, going forward, because I'm looking at it from a Gilbert Franklin fire standpoint, that if there's an opportunity to pick up some additional revenue on any tower, hell, I mean, if it's Collins Maxwell, I don't care, as long as it decreases the cost to the overall users, you know, because we're looking at, you know,
$7,000.
Yeah, I mean, we got 7,500 plugged in now, but, you know, after the subsidization by the board, you know, if that even happens, we're gonna have to pencil in, you know, $10,000 a year going forward, just to hook up to the system. And in our budget, you know, that's
Yeah.
almost, what, 10% of the cost.
And not to dismiss the revenue part of it, but also the service needed, because I understand this needed.
But I wouldn't hinge, I mean, as far as the city's aspect, myself personally, I wouldn't hinge the aspect of, well, if the cellular can't happen, that's not gonna be a deal breaker for us. I mean, as far as if we had a viable spot of land that would work, you know, let's just say that the lagoon was your optimum spot, you said, yes, we want to do that. I don't think the city is going to say, well, it's not going to be, it's a deal breaker if we can't eventually put a cell service on it. I mean, that's just a roll of the dice. I understand where you guys are coming from. You can't make that decision. You know, and there's nothing, I mean, there's nothing you can do to change that. That's just it's a roll of the dice. It may happen, it may not, but.
The sequence is just wrong. I mean, like you said, we had another year.
The time.
The sequence would be different, and we would know going forward, so.
Because the fact of the matter is, if somebody does, which they did a couple of years ago, comes now, if we do this and says, okay, I want to build a cell tower by the bus barns, the answer's going to be no.
Yeah, because
It's
I
going
mean,
to go, all right,
that's
it's going
going
to
to
go talk to Storycom.
it's going to be permitted.
Right.
Yeah, that's going to be, that tower's going to be permitted on that parcel through a conditional use permit. So
Or we could refer them to our landowner and they can.
How would you do that, Frank? What do you mean?
it's a conditional use permit, because today towers aren't permitted in
Oh.
the city limits.
Yeah, gotcha.
So we grant a conditional use permit for the erection of a tower.
Couldn't you, when you do that,
Site.
could you put the wording in there, put the cell tower on there too?
Yeah, it has no bearing on what they decide. though.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly could, but then probably from us, we would have to forego that
Yeah.
and go with the private landowner because we just can't take that risk. This is what I can give you, Jeff. I can quite confidently say that this issue will be studied by our working group for pros and cons because we have not made decisions within our group on the yeas or no's. We just have not looked at it far enough. And I can give you some assurance that I am very positive that it will come up as an agenda item for a Storycom board to discuss at some point in the future. Not within months, but probably a year out, or maybe a little more than a year out, where it be discussed more seriously, but that's about the only guarantee I can give.
Yeah. that's
Yeah.
fine.
Obviously, if a cellular company comes pounding on the door and asking us, we might force the discussion earlier, but it's, you know, we're going to table it, too.
Anything on your discussion?
Well, so no discussion, just to kind of recap what we need. And I think Tom and we're all on the same page. The timeline is the number one issue, and just as soon as possible, getting some commitment because I know you guys just represent a section of your boards or your councils, and so the timeline I think is the biggest thing. And the second thing is when we're talking about rent, are you guys anticipating a annual rent cost, lease amount? Have you discussed that?
That being discussed.
Why- why would we-
It's all be part of the conversation, I think.
I mean, are we gonna have any out of pocket?
No, everything that we do, we're going to cover your legal fees.
Can we reduce the cost of the?
Well,
We don't want you guys to have any out of pocket. So, and Connor should be familiar with what you guys have here because that's
Yeah.
what he agreed to. But, I mean, I'm quite confident Connor will make sure.
I mean, why would we want money?
Can we
I guess
reduce the
walk
cost of
coming
Gilbert
into it,
Fire?
I was expecting
Cost?
that it would be similar to
Oh,
Maxwell,
we're still on it.
Maxwell.
At 5,000 a year,
No.
1,500. I guess I don't know what we want.
Okay. So, we have the copies of the lease, I think we have a few extras. I think what we could do from tonight, if it sounds like we all want to move forward, is get the attorneys together and get Connor a draft copy ASAP, so he can review it and review it with you guys, and we'll keep in close touch with the city as well to see what we need to do to push forward on that.
As soon as we have something, I mean, we can get it put on our agenda and start moving forward.
Okay,
But we,
you need an official, you
Yeah,
need a
we
formal.
need to have something.
We've moved very quickly on that parcel before.
Okay,
We annexed it as dirt was being moved to build the school,
okay.
so.
Hardly remember.
You remember that, don't you? See how quickly we can get one. I'm gonna just make the assumption that we
No,
can get
we
one.
appreciate everyone coming together and talking through this. This is
Smooth.
good.
Motion passed.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Not
I'm not gonna shake your hand. I don't like to shake your hand. Yeah, don't shake my hand.
I agree with you. It will, yeah.
We'll still-
I've heard the first card I played is we just trade for
Just put that tunnel money to the.
Yeah, I would just email them and say,
I mean, I don't even know. Well, I think there's a lot of.
Hey, you want to turn that off?
Trying to figure that out right now.
Oh, it's awesome.
I'm sure that's.
So you're talking about five.
Just try to-
Oh, there it is.
Red money.
Yeah.